Hello, everyone. This is Sankalp,
And this is Gaurang.
and you're listening to our podcast, The Unwritten Case.
All right, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of The Unwritten Case. Today we have Aaron Finder with us. Thank you so much for coming and joining us here. I hope the tea is doing.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's fantastic. Thank you for the tea and thank you for having me.
Yeah.
It's
Let's just go right in. What does your day to day look like at HBS right now?
it's chaotic, but in the best way. I think a lot of the founders at school would agree. It's nonstop. It's nonstop. You have classes. Thank God, spring break has lift. I've been relinquished of a few of my half semesters, although they were both fantastic. E-sales and leadership and happiness, Arthur Brooks.
Okay.
Yeah, especially that was another.
Yeah.
That overlapped with spiritualized leaders a bit. But yeah, I mean, besides class, it's recently it's been also managing. I felt the pressure in the past, the urgency, I guess you could say, in the past few months of our time is ending, unfortunately. And I felt, okay, what are some things that would be great to do before leaving that I would otherwise regret?
Yeah.
Regret is very powerful. Fear of regret's a very powerful driver for me, and I think a lot of other people here, especially the founders of us. And I felt like I'd be remiss if I didn't, use this platform to invite some people. So I've been hearing, oh, you're doing all these events. I would regret it if I didn't, reach out and really try to, bring people here who I feel would add to the community, but also have the community add to their lives as well. So I had everyone from my former boss at Vita Coco, who wrote my recommendation to come to HBS, who's one of the most charismatic leaders I've ever had, to the High Rocks team, the large global fitness platform. Those guys came yesterday, and that's the last one though. So that managing all that logistics day to day, for those and a few other things that I organized. I'm glad that that's off the plate. But very meaningful experiences. And otherwise, just other things for the startup. And now I'm a solo founder now, so a lot of calls, a lot of meetings, and then also just trying to connect with people one on one as well. And like so many of us, want to still go to some events. And the other fear of regret thing is there's so many opportunities to create meaningful memories here that are thrust upon us every day, and there's a balance of doing the hermetic work, but also being in the community. And right now, I'm really trying to err more on being in the community.
It's not easy. Like I know you say you're a founder. It's really tough. It's busy. I'm sure
Busy.
very busy. And in the middle of that, you're bringing guests. You're reaching out. You're trying to focus on building your relationships, maintaining them at HBS, meeting as many people as you can while attending events. It sounds like a very hectic schedule.
It is, but I found it to be additive, right? Like so much of what's going to help my business right now is relational. Sure, I'm trying to manage the building blocks and doing the structural things to setting up the corporation and paying your taxes and all the carrying the water, so to speak. I'm also ordering all my products and delivering them. For those who don't know, I'm trying to start a wellness vending business. So imagine if everyone at Whole Foods had a vending machine network that you could have access to, or more broad access to, all the amazing health and wellness products that people are increasingly buying and getting exposed to on the internet today. So everything from body care, self-care, personal care, cosmetics, to food and beverage and supplements and all that kind of thing, tailored to each location where these automated retail hubs exist. And a few of my partners, I'm in some fitness studios and gyms in the about 2-mile radius of school.
Nice.
And yeah, I've just been operating that. It's very basic, but so yeah, doing things like that. But
What keeps you grounded amidst all of this?
I think a few daily practices. That question has been something I've been chipping away at for a long time in terms of habit formation, other things. A big thing that a conscious decision that I made coming into school was the decision to stop drinking completely. I worked in the alcohol business right after college, and so spent the early 20s partying in New York, working at one of the biggest alcohol companies in the world, the Anheuser-Busch InBev, having full access to any alcohol I wanted. It's great. But it after a while it takes a toll, and I realized coming into school I was going to have a lot of stresses on me personally, on mentally, physically, and also financially. And I felt like dropping that would be one step to, one thing that doesn't serve me.
Yeah.
And it's been great. Honestly, I'm almost done, obviously, with the experience here, and it'll be something I continue because, I think as most people don't want to admit, look, we all want to do a lot of things. We all have a lot on our plate. We want to maximize our time here. I sometimes, a lot of times, don't get as much sleep as I want to, but I do things to maximize the quality of that sleep. I've also stopped eating, close to bedtime. I take a special sleep supplement with all kinds of natural vitamins and minerals in there that help me have better sleep quality. And alcohol is a huge factor in just
detrimental.
Detrimental. And so not having the hangovers, all that stuff, combined with on the other side, when I wake up, I try not to use my phone for the first hour or two. I exercise almost every morning because I've noticed a visceral shift, a very defined shift in my energy on days when I don't exercise. Meditation, usually in the sauna. I sauna almost every day.
Wow.
People will the men on some of the men on campus will see me in the sauna. My sauna hats. I now have two.
Sauna hats.
And that's also really helped because it's something worth investing in because I do it all the time. Trying to journal every day. That's when I'm still working on doing more consistently. And then also like other small things like trying to pick up trash on the ground when I see it, or trying to find little ways to give back, or just be of service. That's another theme that came up in Spiritual Lives of Leaders this week. Which we'll get into that. But yeah, ways of big. I think like there's big and small acts of service, and the big acts of service of big donations. I'm the board of this. I'm doing all. I think I want to do more of that certainly, but I'm also realizing that small acts of service can be an amazing way of grounding yourself as well, even if it's just picking up like a.
For those that don't know, could you give like a quick 10-second summary of like Spiritual Lives of Leaders?
Spiritual Lives of Leaders.
Yeah, it's a class, right?
It's a class. An amazing class. I would highly recommend to any RCs listening, or anyone who wants to come as a guest. It's on X days from 1:30 to 2:50, and it's co-taught by a teaching group that's made up of primarily of Harvard Business School and Divinity School professors and scholars. They brought in many guest speakers as well, and it examines leadership from the spiritual lens, and all rooted in this idea of the fact that the most effective leaders have some sort of spiritual grounding. They have some sort of framework of meaning making in their life that exists outside of their work life. I think it's incredibly necessary to have this here because we get so caught up in the weeds that it's to me it's the way of HBS's way of not missing the forest for the trees.
Yeah.
so to speak. Of you can have the best P&L and the most fastest growing business, all these things, but what's it all for?
Yeah.
Like why? Maybe
what's the purpose?
Because we all have that, right?
Yeah.
Like I can point to a big driver of my ambition, whatever you want to call it, of life was, I grew up in I'm on the older side of our class. I'm 31. I remember 9/11, and it also came at the time when my parents were getting divorced when I was 7. And my lifestyle at the time, very privileged, New York City, Upper West Side, near Columbia. But I saw things change, and I felt the energy of my parents worrying about finances for the first time, and I felt, what it was? I felt a scarcity mindset for the first time in my life versus an abundance mindset. Very grateful to have been born to an abundant and very abundant life. Not to I have so much to be grateful for, like truly. But I was like, something inside myself was like, I don't want to have a scarcity mindset ever again. And I think that also, if you go further back, like maybe it awoke some sort of like epigenetic thing because my grandparents, on especially my mother's side, came from that.
Yeah.
And I've seen how it's affected my grandmother, even where she's now in a very financially secure place, and yet carries this trauma of growing up in dire poverty before and during World War II in Naples.
Oh.
No, it's an amazing woman, but right, like that drove me of like I want to have this success where my family we don't have to worry about resources.
Yeah. I think let's get into this. I think like since the start of the school, I think we met in Morris.
Yeah.
I think among like literally I think within the first week, and I was amazed just by like how you were even conversing, like how self-aware you are. Like, and I think many people who know you on campus, I think they know you as person who is. I know you might have different. So Aaron is currently shaking his head, but but let me tell you, I think people have like very like I think in this pursuit of like ambition and the pursuit of just like the hustling lives that we have, I think it's very difficult to be this like to manage different things. And I think the way you manage is beautiful. This level of self awareness, like just tell me more, like how did it come? Like, and it may be coming from your PhD's life, but like how did that come to be? Like,
something I think we do this exercise in Spiritual Lives of Leaders where we did it once where it's like what's the one thing I need to know about you, like
yeah,
if you guys just met you, what's the one thing. And I think anyone who meets me or I'm going to interact with, like,
Mm.
so a theme that I've now realized reflecting on my life is this incredible sensitivity. I use even something said about me, or I used to say about myself as a kid, because I used to, cripple sometimes under like, if someone was mad at me, if I felt like
yeah,
I wronged somebody, or even great positive energy, or if a lot of energy was being directed at me, like I used to get overwhelmed when people
yeah.
would sing happy birthday to me because I'm like, oh my god, like, oh my god,
You are
like it's
shaking.
crazy, like no, it's a lot.
Yeah.
So this and that's where this, like yesterday I faced this fear I had of
Mm.
doing like a pitch with no script in public to the CEO of Delta.
Yeah.
Like I was like almost crippling under the energy, and because I was just like I could feel the judgment, or I could feel all the eyes on me and all. So I mean, yeah, insanely not to say like some people are like, oh, I'm intuitive, like, oh my god, like, I'm not a psychic, I'm not whatever, but like I that's
You
something
are.
I've come to know about myself that um, drives all my human interaction,
Mm.
where what my gut's telling me is usually the case, in terms of reading people's energy, feeling it. Um, but sorry, your question was like, where does my self knowledge come from?
Self awareness.
Self awareness.
Like, yeah.
But I think so. But I know like that was like
Because
not exactly self awareness, but it's almost a product of my
exactly.
my self work. So
Yeah.
I think it comes from an innate curiosity, which I've had
Mm.
from an early age. I remember an existential crisis, not crisis, but just like an existential moment when I was
Mm.
younger, where I contemplated what happens after you die for the first time. I was like, it was one of the first moments of true awe in my life.
Mm.
Um, and and I think I've always been just by virtue of growing up in this in a community of faith through my school, St. Hills and St. Hugh School, Upper West Side, Episcopalian Middle School. I remember I would ask my parents what is God and stuff like that. But it also meant curiosity about myself. And I think when you contemplate those kinds of questions, you also have to contemplate your place in everything. Um, and I've never been the type of person to be um, what's the word I'm looking for? Like rigid about, okay, like this is the one truth, or this is like, thinking of myself is static.
Yeah.
And I know
Yeah.
we talked earlier about the theme of the self, but like, I think I always had this understanding that I'm evolving. Um, but this feeling of like, the more you can get to know yourself better, the better your life will be, or it's just a good, that's a good pursuit.
Yeah. No. Yes.
worthwhile, worthwhile. So it's been a long time coming, and I think accelerated more in the last few years. Obviously, since coming to school, I think this is kind of the pitch that I now do for the MBA more than anything. It's like, you never have, like, this is such a unique opportunity to work on yourself,
Yeah.
in a way that I could never even fathom coming into this.
Mm.
Yeah.
Like, this just kind of happened after I applied. I didn't apply for this reason. You apply to business school, oh, you Harvard, and the jobs and the opportunities and the people you're going to meet and the network and all. But no, this is really such a gift to be able to take classes like crafting your life,
Yeah.
Yes.
all these exercises.
Aaron, I want to go back to the point. So you talked about going to a Christian school. I don't know the exact like division of it. You mentioned
Episcopal, which means the Church of England.
I see. Okay. Um, just curious. So you had this question in your mind. Like what happens after life. People typically in these moments turn towards scriptures, towards finding God, towards religions. What was your journey there?
Oh man, that's a good question. For the longest time, I prescribed to the Abrahamic version of it. which was what was available to me. So
Mm.
heaven, and 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 that was, recognizing now that it's a great, before there was, modern forms of societal cohesion or control, like a great way to control, keep society from killing itself, or like
Yeah.
doing bad things to each other, right? Like, you don't do these good things that are pro-social, you'll get into heaven, and and I still don't know. I'm still making sense of what, it's still, when I think about it, it still kind of like gives me a sense of awe and not terror, but like this, fear of the unknown type of thing. Um, but now it's changed with my cosmology shifting outside of just prescribing to that Abrahamic cosmology, um, which was in part influenced by starting to explore the psychedelic space.
Okay.
Which is a whole other can of worms, but it also coincided with my stopping drinking. Started to explore last year when I came into school, plant medicine, and understanding other states of experiencing other states of consciousness that um, are different than the one you experience when you're drunk, which I think is it's fun. Not always fun, but
Not when your friends are carrying you.
but the other ones were, I think I'm now starting to understand that there, a lot of, even like fundamental, even like there are parts of Judaism that align with parts of Hinduism and Taoism and other um, faiths and practices, and even, metaphysics and some of quantum physics that like point to a more universal, interconnected state of the world, and some sort of higher form of consciousness, of which we are all just experiencing one part.
You've explored like all
With
these.
the
Sorry.
Gita, reading the Gita when I was 14. I was, for some reason, I was always very open to learning about it, because there was something inside of me. It's like, okay, I'm learning. I'm in this container of Christianity, which, by the way, was like not that strict. It was very liberal. Like, and I also took a religious knowledge class. By the way, my math professor is from Tamil Nadu.
Oh, what?
Yeah, but he was a Christian priest from there,
Oh.
and he taught a class on religious knowledge. And I learned basics about Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism in that class. And I actually, we had to do a project like exploring one, and I picked Buddhism for some reason.
Yeah.
I think I picked it because it's more, it's there's less dogma.
Yeah.
It's just more about self work.
Yeah.
Turning inward
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
reach higher states of consciousness or awareness or intuition. And I visited a temple in New York, and it's great.
Wow.
Still not fully Buddhist, but but I've developed meditation as a practice. Which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really impressed with like how at that young age you were kind of so open and receptive to such different ideologies and different, I think, forms of religion. How did you make sense of all of it together as like you are one person, right? Like how did you pick pieces from what you want to kind of incorporate into your life, and like how did you make sense of so many different things coming together?
I think in some ways I didn't. At least at first. I think that's part of my intellectual maturation in some ways. Like, um, it didn't. A lot of it didn't fundamentally change the way I lived. It's not like I learned about Buddhism and like became Buddhist overnight. It was more just like taking in, um, rather than like fundamentally. It was also, it's taken a long time to 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 get to the place where like my habits or like certain practices have become more habitual,
Yeah.
or I've been able to like put pieces together. um, I I once prescribed to the, I guess, othering, of okay, I'm learning about Hinduism, but that's not relevant to me.
Yeah.
I'm learning about Islam, that's not relevant to me at all. Separation.
Yeah.
But I think just through experience, it's hard to pinpoint. But I now try to embrace, I try to find connection,
Hmm.
versus separation,
Yeah.
when learning about those kinds of things and theories and practices.
Yeah.
You've had all these different experiences. You're taking in all these scriptures. I'm sure there's a lot that's common
Mhm.
themes within
Mhm.
all the different
Mhm.
scriptures,
Mhm.
and there's definitely things that are contested,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
How do you
Particularly.
draw the definition for yourself? I mean, that's what spirituality comes, right? Like
Truly.
you absorb different parts from different scriptures, right? From the Abrahamic side, you have
Mhm.
what you value, what you see. From the Hindu side, from the Buddhist side, how do you reconcile with the differences, the commonalities, and where what's your take on that then?
It's so tough, and this is where I guess I have to get out of my element, because I have not studied. I wish I had co-pilot here from the divinity school to be like, okay, this is
Co-pilot.
but but no, I actually just learned today, literally just before I came here, there was a guest in one of my classes who was starting an AI, like a quantum AI company for robotics, trying to basically like apply quantum to robotics. And the idea that she was talking about was that our brains are quantum, and that we need to, in order to make these robots better and more safe and all these things, like they need to also have a quantum. And she started talking, and when we were talking about, okay, like she's not just building a robotics, sentience company. It's more like she's developing a consciousness company, almost like, re-engineering consciousness. And I was like, okay, we have to talk this.
Yeah.
I really had to get a sense of what her cosmology was, and she turned me on to, I don't want to get this wrong, perennial philosophy, which I need to, fair warning, need to read more about. Apparently comes from Aldous Huxley, who wrote Doors of Perception and was a psychonaut and explored consciousness himself and wrote about it. But I'm curious, but what she described it as is this like underlying theme that everything is connected in the universe. And another book I've just been reading that, is on this theme is that the universe is just an, vast interconnected web of complex systems. I'm not an expert in complexity theory, but that's also been a theme that's been coming up a lot this semester, of the difference between complicated and complex. The fact that a mechanical dog is complicated, but a real human dog, or not human, real dog is complex. Just as we are, we're all these little tiny atoms that are creating this consciousness out of what. But so perennial philosophy is kind of what I prescribe to. But going to your question of, I try to drill down to the core of what I'm looking at. And again, I'm not a scholar, but this kind of started when I went to Israel for the first time. I'm half Jewish. It took me a long time growing up in this Christian community to really embrace that side of me. And it took some Jewish friends in college, to kind of like help me. Okay, like I'm a little more comfort with that. And I got people tell me about birthright. I don't prescribe necessarily, like there's birthright's a complicated thing. I took the opportunity because I'd never been to Israel. I'd always heard about it. I'd always looked. You grow up in this in Christianity, and you always, the Abrahamic religions. You learn about the Holy Land, and I really wanted to experience it for myself. And it's accessible to me. And truly grateful for the opportunity. And then we went to this place called Sfat, which is, for those who don't know, Sfat is a beautiful little village in the rural part of Israel, and it is the spiritual home of Kabbalah. And again, I'm not a Kabbalah scholar. I still have to learn more about it. I'm fascinated by it. But that's where this concept of the fundamental like root, or like spiritual root, or like these fundamental principles of a religion, the principles that are like, I guess, when you drill down past the orthopraxy. So like the parts of these religions where you have to do this, you have to wear a certain thing, or like the demonstrable things, right? What's the essence, right? And I was turned on to this book about Jewish meditation. I was like, wait, I didn't realize, like, Jewish meditation, what's going on? I read it and realized that, yeah, there's a fundamental spirituality behind the religion. And like, there's a fundamental cosmology that it lies deeper than just this. I listened to a lot of recordings, and generally like learning, or if I used to rephrase, or else I'll rephrase that.
Yeah.
I I've learned, he's not an end all be all, but it's been great to expose myself in the past year to some of the recordings and writings of Alan Watts. Those who don't know, was a scholar of Eastern philosophy and religion, and I quote unquote translated. I don't like using that word, but contextualized it for people like me who grew up in Abrahamic. And this idea of like God being this anthropomorphic figure with a white beard that sits on the, I'm literally quoting him now, like sits on a throne, has royal prerogatives. Something that a recording of his that I return to a lot and gives me a lot of grounding. This is one part of it, is like really hit home, is like God. I think of actually now more God as the sense of being the self, which is more aligned to the Hindu cosmology of Satchidananda. Sat, that which is; Chit, that which is consciousness; which is ananda is bliss.
Mm.
And so that
connected
that aligns a lot with the concept of, again, I'm not an expert in, but Ein Sof. Aynsof.
Okay.
In the Kabbalistic tradition, it's Hebrew, and Ein Sof points more to like, maybe I'm mistranslating it, but like ultimate reality.
Okay.
And that like we are all, all of us have some sort of like fundamental life force.
Yeah.
Running through us.
Aaron, you spoke about universe being like this complicated web of connected things, right? And essentially we all are part of the universe. Then what makes who we are? If you were to think about, like, if we all are part of God, or if you're part of the universe, what do you think makes Aaron and makes Gorang? Like, what then differentiates us?
But I was just saying to you guys, it touches on something that we discussed. We did an exercise. We did some exercises in spiritual lives of leaders, and this was I felt like I unlocked a new level in my spiritual toolkit this week with class, because I'd never really contemplated like just like who you are when you strip away everything, like strip away everything, like
money,
your life, your clothes you wear, what you like, if you think about just like the potential of like a human life when they're first born, and there's nothing, like really all that defines them is just their parents and the context in which they're born. I read in this, I mentioned this book, Notes on Complexity, there was an interesting analogy of, it's each of our consciousnesses is like it's like when you go into a cave and you see these pools of water in the cave, but actually if you dive into the pool, there's a much big, they're actually all connected, part of this bigger underground lake, but they just appear
as
on the surface as individual. That's, again, we're all constantly changing.
Yeah.
All constantly changing. And so I'm reading that. I'm like, okay, I want to explore that more. So again, I don't know. I want to know more about that way of thinking. I think it comes from, I forget which philosophy, that maybe it was a Buddhist thought experiment. But that, okay, so this actually goes back to the other piece of this Alan Watts thought experiment that I mentioned, or this speech, where that conceptualization of God being Satchidananda comes from, which is that, say, if existence, consciousness, bliss, it's not all about sustaining bliss. It's not all about having, and this is something that I think in America it's hard for us to, it's human, right, to have perfectly comfortable life and have certainty that everything in your life is going to work out.
Yeah.
If that were the case, if you could live 75 years of time, and have guaranteed anything you want, everything, like it's all great, everything you want, maximally. After a while, that would get old. You were dreaming this dream of 75 years of time and living it viscerally, and it's all guaranteed pleasure and great things guaranteed, and you knew it. You would make further risk. You take further risk as to what's going to happen to you, and get more and more uncertain, because that's what makes life worth living.
And that's actually, you feel, is what defines a person as well, like defines who I am. It's like, what am I looking for? Like, given all the other, just like assuming everything else is, all these materialities, all these things are like just given, like let's don't think about that. Then what you crave for is essentially what defines.
I think another theme that's come up in my life in the past year or so is serendipity. That the unexpected is, that's in some ways a blissful, or like it adds so much meaning, or something to be embraced. Because again, it's not to say like life, the whole point of life is fun, right? But you guys know more about this than I do. But the other part of that speech, not to keep going back to this Alan Watts speech, but like the way he translates some of the Hindu cosmology is that the world is the drama of God. And that it's just, this is God's way of entertaining itself. And we're all living, and then it's funny, like it's funny about that, and that's part of this thought experiment of like, and part of that drama is that we don't know what's going to happen, and then that comes back to your question of like, that's why we all have to be different, that we're all part of this cosmic drama, Every single thing, inanimate, animate, animals, humans, all part of this divine drama. And God gets to experience that through all these different forms of consciousness, which inherently have to be different. And if you go to complexity theory, that's part of the complex system. Of there's never going to be another me or you guys the same exact way.
That's what we believe in Hindu culture. We're all souls that originate from Godhead.
Godhead, yes.
From Godhead.
Yes.
And we detach ourselves from the main soul, like Godhead, to come to earth to enjoy materialism. Right? Because you have the spiritual form, you want to come to earth to enjoy this material form, but then eventually your soul internally wants to go back to Godhead.
There is also,
so you want to be more in touch with your soul, understand how that motivation. So to the question of who are we if we strip ourselves away from all the material things? We're a soul that wants to go back to Godhead. But then the material sense masks the soul, masks our consciousness from being in touch with our soul, because we are, surrounded by material, and we want to enjoy that while we're here.
Yes.
And so the reincarnation is a form of continuous material enjoyment, material gratification, sense gratification, until we understand our soul and what the main motivation is, which is to go back to Godhead.
That's a really beautiful way of saying it.
It's kind of, it says that soul keeps getting reincarnated until it lets go of the attachments, or gets satisfied with getting all this material satisfaction, and then essentially at the end attains back to its Godhead, and which is essentially called moksha
Yes.
In the scriptures. Coming to, speaking of drama, and then coming to another, now the lives of HBS student. Lives of a person recruiting, lives of a person founding, life of a person probably joining back their family business. There's drama everywhere, right? And I think one thing that kind of generally, if I had to generalize, connects all of us is this type A kind of a personality, which is we are driven by output, we are driven by success metrics, we're driven by these data indicators that can be different for everyone, but there's always something that drives us. If I were to ask you, and I'm sure you are founding, right? I think there are some aspirations that you also have.
Absolutely.
How do you bridge that version of yourself, that should be a student version of yourself, with Darren Finder of you, which is the spiritual you and the type A you?
So it goes back to actually the fact that I didn't answer that the original question. It goes back to actually trying to return to just the pure soul. That is what I try to do when I meditate. I try to use my meditation time as a time to just be. It's very hard. Not always the case. But try to remind myself, you are just a human. That's it. And sometimes your job right now is just to be. Just be. Yes, there are all these other forces acting on you. They're swirling around you. And all these expectations and identities and all. But what are you at just you? And I think it is unique. We are born with certain tendencies, our brain chemistry is a certain way, etc. There's nature and nurture, right? But also it's beautiful to think there was a time when humans just, all we had to do was be. And so it was scary as hell. We had, you had to fight off stuff and, lions and whatever. And visceral survival was real. But in some ways, it is beautiful to see, animals or certain people who do live their lives where they just are. That's full stop. And, and I think a lot of us are actually trying to get there.
Yeah.
But get there by attaining a certain level of material. And look, maybe I'm one of them. Where you want to get to a state where you can have true freedom, to live life fully in accordance with your. We talk about this in class in Spiritual Lives Leaders this week. The voice of the genuine inside you, sound of the genuine. This comes from Howard Thurman, a spiritual leader at Boston University.
Okay.
So return to that genuine voice of the genuine. And so I try to return to the voice of the genuine in trying to guide my life and give my, continually try to give myself purpose or return to higher purpose, but balance that. So I think it's giving yourself space to meditate or retreat inside, or do things that put you in a state of flow. For me, another part of that's music. Some people might have seen me with the fiduciaries last night. Music is actually a spiritual practice for me that I've always had. My mom used to say I woke up singing naturally, and I love it. And because what is it? It's you producing through either your voice or some other instrument, right? It's vibration, and you're sharing that vibration with other people, and that evokes something in them, and literally can change your brainwaves. It's pretty wild. So yeah, music's another one.
Essentially, while chasing your ambition, I think you kind of ensure that you connect with yourself, and you use these ways like music, meditation, and kind of like balance that trade-off as well.
And returning to your why, like, why do I want to have, provide myself with, as we all do, right, material, more resources, or make an impact,
Yeah.
right? I want, a big reason why I came to business school was I want to make a positive impact on the world, and I felt like there was I had potential to do something that could impact, hopefully, society more broadly and spread positivity in some way. I don't know.
Yeah.
One last question on this topic.
Okay, yeah.
I have a spiritual master, right? Like in Hindu culture, we have gurus,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Considered spiritual masters. And I was having a conversation with mine. It's almost been a year, maybe more. And he told me something very interesting, which I don't know if I fully subscribe to, but I'm curious what you think.
Okay.
He said, in each life, right? Because we believe in reincarnation, but in each life, you can only excel at one thing, not both, which is either the spiritual side or the material side.
Oh,
You can balance, but to excel, you have to pick one or the other. You cannot do both, because to him, to excel in spiritual side, you have to dedicate time, right? Like you have to put in the time to get in touch with your soul, to get in touch with yourself, or you put that aside and you dedicate time towards the material side, which is coming to HBS, founding, maximizing shareholder value. Do you agree with that take? Do you think that is true, or do you think there is truly a balance where you can excel at both?
I think, well, that's a really tough question. And I hadn't fully thought about it that way. I think we'd all like to think that, look, the spiritual lives leaders class, right? Like, we actually had some people in class this week, some of whom they've completely given up the material. There's one guy who he went on a walking pilgrimage, sold all his belongings, like in India, walking pilgrimage, like was literally relying on the kindness of strangers for everything. And a lot of people are like, oh, I could never, it's because it's scary. It's really scary. And on the other side, there was this hedge fund manager who started the Children's Investment Fund, which to this day is apparently one of the most successful hedge funds in the world. And it's all through this lens of giving back, and it's actually a philanthropy. And the guy who I forget, I'm getting his exact, it's Chris Hahn. Anyway, he's given himself enough material success, but he's given so much away, and he's still dedicated himself to the just the spiritual impact. I don't know what his exact spirituality is. He's Christian, maybe, but he's dedicated himself to the positive impact on society fully. But I think you can also do things. You can also make money by doing things that have positive impact. And to me, if it is aligned with you and the voice of the genuine inside you, then I think that it can also be spiritual. Like what you do for, we the world needs to progress. And everyone, I think I'm also trying to unpack or learn more about the concept of dharma as well. And maybe that's just a story I'm telling myself, but I feel like so many of the forces that have led me, I've always tried to listen to or do things that align with my intuition. This voice sound of the genuine. But I remember seeing some people who would come before, their energy and just what their life was like, and there was a voice inside of me saying I wanted to do something different that aligned with who I was at the time, and still kind of am, and something that animated me more. And not to say, I don't know if that way. This concept actually asked us to the person who came to Spiritualized Leaders, did give a presentation about the Bhagavad Gita, and this concept of dharma and your spiritual calling and duty. I think that it can also be related to the material, because if you're doing something that positively impacts people's lives, or brings people together, creates community.
Then maybe you're
then in some ways I think you can do work that is also spiritual.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, that this is so, I feel like I'm so out of my element, but that's something I'm still unpacking.
Yeah.
But we also read about the hospital in India, that case last year to start RC year, about that doctor who started that. Yeah, it's a crazy good business, but it's also,
Went
you
to
know,
yeah.
but I do see his points of like, I'm sure there are people who prescribe you have to go into the woods and just give up everything and be hermetic or ascetic. But I think there are other people, like one of the guests we had in class at Spiritualized Leaders was the CEO of Novartis, who grew up Hindu and still prescribes to Hinduism. He was woven in Taoism as well. And there's another spiritual concept that I'm trying to learn more about and unpack and live by, which is Wu Wei, from Taoism, which is this idea of like trying to understand the forces of the universe acting on you, and figuring out where you can like go with the flow, go with where things are. You have to do that while also not being trampled over at certain times. But like for me, that also was, you can do that, but also have it be uncomfortable, right? Where, like yesterday, the moment that where I decided to pitch in class, the Delta CEO, I kind of like Reza saw me kind of like slightly raise my hand. I didn't even fully raise my hand. I was like very hesitant actually, because there was this.
But he saw you.
But he saw me a little bit, and he knew that I had emailed him, and but that was me being like, okay, universe, waterfall,
Let's go.
it's happening, and just go with this, and and it was fine, and it's scary, but it happened. Or decide to apply to business school. I was thinking about that as like, because that you're uprooting your life, right? You could say that's like deciding to do a big life shift like this is not going with the flow, but for me it was, because I felt these, whatever, my sensitive self was, I was trying to listen to the sound of the genuine at the time, which was, you've been in corporate America for so long, you have all these qualms with how things are done and your place in the whole ecosystem, and you see something in yourself, and there was just like perfect timing with some other life forces regarding a relationship I was in at the time, and wanting to give myself a platform to you know do more with my life and give myself more freedom later, so that I could be a better partner, a better community member, have more freedom. It's a long distance relationship at the time, so part of me was like, oh, like I feel so constrained, I can't travel when I want to be my own boss and maybe do something more remote, all these, there's so many other things. So I was like, okay, like this, and suddenly once I started on this path, I felt, oh, the universe is kind of conspiring for me a bit. Like I had this this amazing mentor come into my life. Or we call him consultant, but truly he became a mentor of mine. Who a friend of mine had used to get into Booth, and I was like, oh, like let me talk to this guy, and that was so serendipitous, talking about the serendipity, and I wasn't even going to apply to Harvard, and then I talked to him, and he's like, wait, what are you doing? Like, why aren't you applying here? So it's more like, to me, Dharma, the sound of the Wu Wei, the sound of the genuine, it all comes back to internal self, checking in with yourself. And I think maybe that comes back to your question of like, how do you kind of like balance the two of like the ambition and all the material stuff, and then the spiritual side, like just giving yourself space to check in with the self and listen the sound of the genuine. And the more space, Toto Wolff took a sip, amazing sip. But being on the balcony, being on the dance floor, think about that a lot. You got to give. I love so much. We love being on the dance floor. We love building. Things, being at all the things. I certainly, it's deal with that every day of overloading yourself. You always overextend, but you have to. But being on the balcony is so important.
I think that's a good segue to our last question of the podcast. I think Aaron, this has been phenomenal. I know for some people it might be like heavy to understand so many different parts of like I think ideologies of like who we are and like how we think and how we balance it with the HBS life. But let's go 10 years after, Aaron. Like from now, like 10 years later. How do you see your case being written in these 10 years, obviously, of you finding yourself, no pun intended, of you of you pursuing your ambition? There are so many things that came up of the value of mentors, right? You can become, but like, just how do you see yourself? How do you see your case being written?
I haven't thought. I
Take it.
perhaps need to think about that more overall as an exercise, but Well, as all of us founders, we hope to have, glowing cases, a glowing case about how you overcame struggle, or you were this HBS success story. Um, I think more than anything, I hope to you know embody a protagonist um, who's built a company that is at its core uniquely human. I think if I take anything away from the spiritualized of leaders class, is that um, that's like a fundamental truth, is that spirituality is also is recognizing the human, and like getting back to like that unique essence, that soul in all of us.
Yeah.
Which I think gets lost in, spreadsheets are great, but people are people, and there are numbers on spreadsheets. We have to have, you know, you know HR departments have to exist, but doesn't mean they can't be human and recognize and lead from that place, and um, really truly respecting people and their humanity, and what viscerally drives them, um, leading from a place of curiosity. And so I truly, and this is just also stemming from me wanting to, part of the reason I wanted to found was to do things differently than what I'd experienced in corporate America, and with large companies, especially more corporatized companies, especially. Um, so I would hope to build a business of significance, but also build an organization that has a positive impact at large on the world. Um, you know, Not to get too idealistic, or not trying to say like I'm going to be the next messiah or whatever. Like I'm going to a consumer. I mean, I'm building a consumer products business, or something that wants to be a player in the consumer products ecosystem.
Yeah.
But still a fundamental force for good. But that also, but as I was reminded actually from the CEO of Delta yesterday, like really putting people first, and working that into the DNA of the company. But also someone I'd love to, aspirational for my business. Like I'm an example of a founder who went into this sector, this industry, and really rethought how and innovated on every aspect of how business is done, and how an organization can play in that space and do business in that space. And I'm going to ultimately impact people. I truly want to build a company that when everyone who interacts with it, whether it's the automated retail hub or people at the company, whatever, these are moments that joy, spark joy. When it comes to the actual customer experience itself, like surprise and delight. But really, it's like it's spreading positive energy, with and imbuing that, infusing that in everything you do. But also someone who can personify, as a protagonist myself. Like personally, I want to live those values. I want to have family one day. I want to have a meaningful impact, on my communities. Um, and show that you can build something of significance that has a positive impact on the world, that is a successful venture. And of course, I want to make this thing. I have big dreams, big ambitions for what I'm trying to build, but do it first principles from the right place, and not have to also sacrifice everything, and be like all or nothing, and show that you can also you know balance it, and that the thing that keeps coming back as well through spiritual lives, through leadership and happiness, and like um, it's the thing. Some of the things I have, some like fundamental truths I wrote down. If I were to, one of the bigger regrets is I never did a my take, but like some fundamental truths. And I've already touched on that. Everyone is connected, and it's all divine. The One of the blessings I had, we didn't even get into this, but through my last venture, and some of the other entrepreneurs things I was doing, RC gear. My former co-founder and I applied for a grant from the Mahindra Center to do a podcast of our own on the psychedelic space, and plant medicine, and exploring that. That was the space we were working in before, and we had the great privilege to visit the Lakota Nation, in the Black Hills of South Dakota, which I highly recommend people visit. It's a gorgeous part of the United States.
Yeah.
And we met with a Lakota leader who used to be the head of the Native American Church, Sandor Ironrope, incredible human being, generously let us down his property, and one of the Lakota um, uh, it's like tenets of Lakota cosmology is this idea of metakuye oyasin. They actually say it it's actually a greeting, or something that's said between people, kind of recognize we are all related. All of us are relations. Everything in the world relation. Again, going back to like connecting things from different spiritualities and different cosmologies, like that also, like, wow, that mirrors a lot of other things, right? It's fascinating.
Friendship.
But there's that. Love is the most powerful force in the universe. Is another big one. And I think I want to be someone who always leads with love, operates from a place of love, and I think both professionally, personally, I can show that. I will have died a happy man.
Yeah, love is a powerful force in the world, much needed right now in this world. So thank you so much for sharing that. But essentially summarizing, making a positive difference in the world the right way and staying connected to yourself.
I know it's a very long way. It also shows you how little I know. It's tough because there's tangible, there's philosophical.
Yes.
But I guess yeah, at least it points to like, who knows what's going to happen in the next 10 years or so.
Of course.
But we can have a theory of how it's going to, at least try and work towards that.
But I think philosophically, like there's more likelihood that it would align there than in the nitty gritty details.
That's right.
Aaron, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. And
Aaron, thank you so much.
Yeah, we're excited.
Thank you guys so much.
Stay tuned for the next one. Thank you.
I will.